Look, I've been diving deep into arthritis research, and what I'm about to share will completely flip everything you thought you knew about joint pain. Picture this. Deep inside every single cell in your cartilage, there's this tiny factory working 24/7, folding proteins like origami masters creating paper cranes. It's called the endoplasmic reticulum, and here's the kicker. When this little factory gets stressed out, it's like watching dominoes fall. One mistake in the assembly line, and suddenly your joints are screaming at you every morning. But here's what blew my mind. Scientists discovered that this stress doesn't just damage your cartilage randomly. No. It kicks off an entire cascade of inflammatory events even before your mitochondria, your cell's power plants, start breaking down. Think of it like a smoke alarm going off before the actual fire starts. Now, you're probably wondering what on earth could stress out something so microscopic, right? Well, that's where things get absolutely wild, because the answer involves something you'd never expect to find in your joints. So get this. Researchers found receptors for bile salts sitting right there in your joint cells. Bile salts. The stuff that's supposed to be hanging out in your gallbladder, helping you digest that juicy steak. I spent hours wrapping my head around this one because it seemed totally bonkers at first. But then it clicked. See, there are actually two types of bile in your body. You've got the primary bile your liver cranks out for digestion, sure. But then your gut microbes, those trillions of tiny buddies living in your intestines, they take that bile and transform it into something else entirely. It's like they're remixing a song, creating secondary bile salts that travel through your bloodstream and land right in your joints, acting like bodyguards against inflammation. This isn't just some cool biochemistry factoid, though. When I was in practice, I noticed something eerie. Almost every patient who'd had their gallbladder removed or taken antibiotics would develop joint pain within months. Their microbial orchestra had gone silent, and their joints paid the price. But there's one specific bile salt that changes everything. Here's where things get fascinating. There's this specialized bile salt called TUDCA, originally extracted from bear bile, though nowadays it's made synthetically, thank goodness for the bears. What makes TUDCA so special? It zeroes in on that endoplasmic reticulum stress we talked about earlier, literally calming down that microscopic factory when it's freaking out. It's like sending in a crisis management team to prevent the whole operation from collapsing. But TUDCA doesn't stop there. This compound shuts down inflammatory signaling molecules in your joints with the precision of a sniper taking out targets. We're talking about all types of arthritis here. Osteoarthritis, rheumatoid arthritis, even gout. The bile isn't just putting out fires. It's actually protecting the machinery that repairs and maintains your cartilage in the first place. So your microbiome isn't just about digestion or immune health. It's literally determining whether you'll be climbing stairs pain-free or wincing with every step. And speaking of things that protect your joints at the cellular level, there's another nutrient that stops calcium from turning your cartilage into concrete. Now, calcium's supposed to be in your bones, right? Strong bones, healthy skeleton, all that jazz. But here's the twisted irony. When you're deficient in vitamin K2, calcium starts wandering off like a lost tourist, setting up camp in all the wrong places. Your soft tissues, your arteries, and yes, your joints. Suddenly you've got calcification building up, creating those painful bone spurs called osteophytes that feel like shards of glass grinding together every time you move. Vitamin K1 handles blood clotting, sure, but K2, that's the bouncer that keeps calcium in line, making sure it stays in your bones where it belongs. Here's the wild part. People taking warfarin for their heart are unknowingly blocking both K1 and K2. So while they're preventing blood clots, they're simultaneously increasing calcification in their joints and arteries. It's like trying to prevent a flood by damming up a river, only to create a worse flood downstream. The solution? You've got to get K2 from higher fat foods, which we'll dive into later. But first, let's talk about what happens when your immune system turns traitor. Rheumatoid arthritis is a completely different beast. This isn't just wear and tear on your joints. This is your own immune system going rogue, launching antibodies against your cartilage like friendly fire in a war zone. Your joints become battlegrounds, stuck in a constant state of inflammation because your body can't tell friend from enemy anymore. It's an autoimmune condition, which means the real problem isn't in your joints at all. It's in your immune system's command center. Now, here's something most people don't realize. There's one vitamin that acts like a peace treaty between your warring immune cells, dialing down the aggression and putting out the inflammatory fires. That vitamin is D3. But, and this is crucial, taking the normal recommended dose won't cut it. You need therapeutic levels. We're talking 20,000 to 40,000 IUs daily, sometimes even higher depending on your situation. At those doses, vitamin D doesn't just support your immune system. It fundamentally rebalances it, especially for joints like your knees and lower back. When you're deficient, your inflammatory signals skyrocket like gasoline thrown on a campfire. And whether you've got rheumatoid or osteoarthritis, this vitamin is hands down one of the most powerful anti-inflammatory tools in your arsenal. But high-dose vitamin D requires backup vitamins to work safely, which we'll cover soon. First, though, we need to talk about the hidden triggers lurking in your pantry. So joint pain doesn't just happen in a vacuum. There are specific foods acting like secret agents, triggering inflammation every single time you eat them. Food allergies are one culprit, but there's something even sneakier going on. When you eat high-carb meals, glucose molecules bump into protein molecules in your bloodstream, creating these gnarly compounds called advanced glycation end products, AGEs for short. Think of them as sticky, damaged proteins that gum up your joints like syrup poured into a machine. Your immune system sees these AGEs as invaders and launches an inflammatory response. But wait, there's more. Scientists have discovered biofilms in arthritic joints, slimy protective shields that harbor bacteria in tiny calcium shells. Your immune system can't touch them because they're hiding like bank robbers in a vault. And here's the creepy part. Some of these bacteria trace back to infections in your mouth, like old root canals or gum disease. Those infections leak into your lymphatic system, travel through your bloodstream, and set up shop in your joints and arteries, keeping you in a state of chronic inflammation. It's like having saboteurs inside your body. But the biggest game changer I've found? The connection between your gut microbiome and your joints runs deeper than anyone imagined. Which brings us directly to the 7 worst offenders you need to eliminate starting today. Alright, let's rip the band-aid off. First up, emulsifiers. These are ingredients like polysorbate 80 that you'll find in frozen desserts and creamy dressings, making everything smooth and blended. But they absolutely wreck your microbiome, the same microbes that create those protective bile salts for your joints. Consuming these is like carpet bombing your gut bacteria. Next, low-fat soy protein powder. You'll see this junk in protein bars as soy protein isolate. Not only does it interfere with your liver, but it's completely devoid of taurine, the amino acid you need to produce bile and contract your gallbladder. Plus, there might be hexane residues, a chemical solvent, hiding in there, and nobody's really checking. Third, refined seed oils. Yeah, some studies say they're fine, but those studies used cold-pressed oils, not the garbage that's been heated to 570 degrees, creating toxic byproducts called aldehydes that shred your joints, arteries, and mitochondria. Fourth, alcohol, especially beer. Beer breaks down into purines, triggering gout and joint inflammation, plus it spikes your blood sugar and hammers your liver. Anything that destroys your liver will eventually destroy your joints. They're connected like two sides of the same coin. Fifth, Casein A1 protein from conventional dairy. This stuff, especially when concentrated as sodium caseinate or calcium caseinate in protein bars, will light your joints on fire. It's cheap protein from China found even in infant formula. No wonder kids develop milk allergies. Sixth, modern wheat. It's loaded with amylopectin A, a super high glycemic starch that spikes blood sugar worse than table sugar, plus wheat germ agglutinin that tears up your gut lining, glyphosate herbicide that nukes your microbiome, and gluten that creates opioid-like compounds before hitting you with delayed pain. And seventh, high-fructose corn syrup, an industrial Frankenstein sugar that creates inflammation in your liver and insulin resistance without ever turning off your hunger switch. These 7 foods are like throwing matches into a gasoline-soaked joint. But here's the beautiful part. Once you know what to avoid, you can start rebuilding with the right fuel. Now we're getting to the good stuff. If those secondary bile salts are so critical for joint health, how do we make more of them? Simple. Feed your microbes the right food. Fermented foods like sauerkraut, kefir, and Bulgarian yogurt are like sending reinforcements to your gut army. These foods are packed with live bacteria that get to work immediately, transforming your primary bile into those potent anti-inflammatory secondary bile salts that travel straight to your joints. It's like installing a 24/7 repair crew inside your digestive system. Every forkful of tangy sauerkraut is literally dosing your joints with protection. And these aren't just probiotics in a pill. These are living foods with enzymes, nutrients, and bacterial strains working in harmony. The transformation happens naturally the way nature intended. But fermented foods are just the beginning. You also need the raw materials, the fats and nutrients that your body uses to build healthy joints from the ground up. Which brings us to the fats that actually heal. Here's what your joints are really craving: healthy fats. Olive oil, avocado oil, wild-caught fish oils. These are liquid gold for inflammation. But don't sleep on animal fats from grass-fed sources either. Grass-fed butter, grass-fed cheese, grass-fed beef fat. These contain vitamin K2, the nutrient that keeps calcium in your bones instead of your joints, remember? Then you've got foods high in vitamin D3, salmon, cod liver oil. Though honestly, sunshine's your best bet when possible. But for therapeutic doses, the 60,000 to 80,000 IU range that actually reverses arthritis, you'll probably need supplements, especially in winter. And make sure you're pairing that D3 with K2 and magnesium to avoid any side effects. Omega-3s from fish and cod liver oil are non-negotiable. They're the fire extinguishers for inflammatory pathways. Sulfur-rich foods like onions, garlic, and cruciferous vegetables feed your joints the building blocks they need to repair cartilage. Joints love sulfur like plants love sunlight. And here's one people forget: collagen from bone broth. Your joints are literally made of collagen. When you eat a tender steak, you're getting maybe 2 to 5% collagen. But your body needs 30% of its protein from collagen sources. So either chew on tougher, grass-fed cuts, or sip bone broth regularly. It's not optional if you want your cartilage to rebuild. Now, there are a couple final pieces to lock into place. Before we wrap this up, let me hit you with 2 critical points. First, keep your iron levels low. Too much iron creates a rusted, inflamed environment in your joints. Iron's tricky because once it's in your body, it's nearly impossible to get out. So ditch the iron skillet, avoid iron supplements unless you're menstruating and deficient. And if you're a man with high iron, you're basically walking around with inflammation on autopilot. Second, remember TUDCA? That bile salt we talked about earlier? It's available as a supplement, and it's one of the most effective remedies for arthritis because it protects that endoplasmic reticulum stress point and shields your cartilage from breaking down. It's like giving your cellular factory a security system. So here's your game plan: eliminate those 7 inflammatory foods immediately. Emulsifiers, soy protein isolate, refined seed oils, alcohol, Casein A1, modern wheat, and high-fructose corn syrup. Then flood your system with fermented foods to rebuild your microbiome and those protective secondary bile salts. Load up on healthy fats, especially grass-fed sources rich in K2. Get therapeutic doses of vitamin D3 with magnesium and K2 as cofactors. Consume omega-3s and sulfur-rich vegetables daily. Prioritize collagen from bone broth or tougher cuts of meat. Keep iron low. And consider adding TUDCA to target that cellular stress at its root. Your joints aren't doomed. They're just starving for the right nutrients and drowning in the wrong foods. Make these changes, and you'll feel the difference in weeks. Less pain, more mobility, and finally, the freedom to move through life without wincing at every step. The power's in your hands, or rather on your plate. Now go reclaim those joints.